Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, envy, and insatiable greed. Potent and dark emotions often lead individuals down the path of crime. When mixed with unbridled lust and an obsessive need to control others, these feelings can shape a horrifying, lethal intent. It's a chilling concept, and it becomes even more sinister when these emotions fester secretly within a family unit. This narrative unfolds in a Sydney suburb, revolving around the Lin family, a seemingly harmonious and large household. Their story escalated into one of the most infamous and bloody crimes in Australian history. The complexity and duration of the investigation are noteworthy, as the perpetrator grew confident in escaping justice. His meticulously crafted and brutally executed plan was nearly flawless. However, a minor overlooked detail eventually led the police to the breakthrough they needed. Let's delve into the beginning of this saga, exploring how a cocktail of greed, envy for others' success, and corrupt passion can drive someone to madness, transforming them into a monstrous figure who didn't even spare children in their rampage. The Lin family story is a portrait of love, ambition, and tragic end. Min Lin and Yun Lin's love story began in the late 1980s during their college years at an Australian university. Both natives of China, they had separately immigrated to pursue higher education. Lily, through an exchange program, and Min, who was 2 years her senior, remained in the country for a professional internship after completing his bachelor's degree. Their paths crossed in a university corridor, leading to what they later recalled as love at first sight. Sharing common roots and dreams, both felt like outsiders in a foreign land, but were united by their aspirations to start a new life in Australia after graduation. The couple married and settled in the picturesque and tranquil suburb of North Epping in Sydney. Their love blossomed into a large, tight-knit family deeply connected and committed to each other. In August 1994, they welcomed their first child, a daughter named June Brenda Lin, who mostly went by her middle name, Brenda. Henry, their son, was born in 1997, followed by the youngest, Terry, in 2000. Entering the 2000s, Min and Yun decided to embark on a business venture, opening a small newsstand. Their dedication transformed this modest start into a thriving news agency with its publishing arm on Rose Street. The Lin family's business flourished, enabling them to enjoy a comfortable lifestyle with a spacious home, a luxury car, and prestigious private schooling for their children. Min focused on business affairs while Yun dedicated herself to homemaking and nurturing their children. In their community, the Lins were well regarded for their hard work, kindness, and philanthropy. They were known as exemplary, caring parents and never engaged in conflicts. Brenda, their eldest, was a standout beauty and an excellent student with a compassionate heart for animals. The boys, Henry and Terry, were energetic and sports-loving, sharing a passion for soccer. The siblings shared a close bond, almost inseparable from each other. Relocating relatives from China to Australia, as the Lin family settled in Australia and their financial prosperity grew, they began inviting relatives from China to visit, live, or even stay permanently. In the early 2000s, Min's parents were the first to move to North Epping, living nearby and helping with the children. Min's father also worked in their newsstand on weekends. A few years later, Yun's parents also moved to the Sydney suburb, with Min and Yun buying them a small house. Yun's sister Irene came to live with the Lins, assisting with household chores and the children. By this time, the Lin family business was generating substantial income, reportedly nearing $1 million annually. Their venture wasn't just a shop or publishing house. It had become a local hub where people gathered to read and discuss news over coffee. Towards the end of 2007, Min Lin's younger sister, Kathy Lin, and her husband, Liang Bin Robert Z, also moved to Australia, seeking better opportunities in the bustling. Here's the revised transcript with added punctuation, stops, emotions, and corrected spelling mistakes. City of Sydney. They had visited relatives in Australia before and briefly lived in Melbourne, but returned to China. This time, they were determined to settle in Australia permanently. Robert, a former successful ant doctor in China, decided to switch careers and try entrepreneurship. The Eddies opened their own restaurant in Sydney, investing all their savings, but the business struggled and soon closed. Attempts to open a cafe or snack bar also failed. Robert, lacking business acumen and financial management skills, struggled in his new ventures. Eventually, Robert and Kathy moved to North, being closer to family. Kathy found work, but Robert remained in a phase of self-discovery, unsure of his future path. The Lin and Z families were bound not only by kinship, but also by strong friendship. They saw each other almost daily, stayed in constant touch, and often gathered for family meals. Their last such gathering was on the evening of Friday, July 17, 2009, at the home of Kathy and Min's parents. Unbeknownst to them, this would be their final reunion. The Lin family home, a scene of a gruesome massacre. On the morning of July 18th, the Lin family's shop remained unexpectedly closed, surprising their regular customers. The shop, which had operated 7 days a week for years, showed no signs of opening, with no notice or warning on the doors. This unusual occurrence raised concerns among the customers and neighboring shop owners. One of them, after several unsuccessful attempts to reach Min, called his sister Kathy to inquire about the situation. Kathy was both surprised and alarmed, knowing her brother had never closed the shop for a day without prior arrangements, often having their father or father-in-law cover for him. She tried calling Min and then his wife Yun, but to no avail. Her calls to their home phone also went unanswered. Worried, Kathy and her husband, Robert, decided to visit Min's house to ensure everything was all right. Arriving around 9:00 a.m., they noticed the family car in the driveway and found the front door unlocked, but no sign of the homeowners. Inside the house was eerily quiet, and calls for the family members went unanswered. The house appeared undisturbed, with no signs. Forced entry. Kathy, calling out for her brother again, ascended to the second floor. Upon opening the bedroom door of Min and Yun Lin, she screamed in shock and horror, staggering back at the gruesome scene before her. The room was drenched in blood, covering the floor, walls, ceiling, furniture, and curtains. The lifeless body of 43-year-old Yun Lin lay near the bed, mutilated beyond immediate recognition. In the adjacent room, where 39-year-old Irene, Yun's sister, slept, the scene was equally ghastly. Irene lay dead in her bed, her face a bloody pulp. In the children's bedrooms, 12-year-old Henry and 9-year-old Terry had also been brutally beaten to death, their bodies lying in different corners of the room. Brenda, the 15-year-old daughter, had fortunately been away on a school trip the previous day and was not at home during the tragic night. The body of the household's head, Min Lin, was nowhere to be found, leading to a faint hope that he might be alive, possibly injured, taken hostage, or escaped. Kathy immediately called emergency services, but was so hysterical from the shock that she struggled to convey what had happened. She screamed and cried into the phone, begging for medics to arrive quickly and try to save anyone they could. However, the first responders could only confirm the deaths of all the victims at the scene of the massacre. The morning after a chilling discovery following Kathy's frantic call to emergency services, Robert left to fetch the Lin parents, who lived about 10 km away from the crime scene. The police and paramedics arrived within minutes, and what they encountered was immediately dubbed as one of the most horrific crime scenes they had ever witnessed. Tragically, it was too late for any member of the Lin family. Each had been killed by multiple blows to the head with a heavy blunt object resembling a hammer. However, the lethal weapon was nowhere to be found, leading investigators to conclude that the perpetrator had taken it with them. Min Lin's body was eventually discovered in his own bedroom, covered with a blood-soaked blanket. Like his family, he had been beaten to death in a similar manner. It appeared that he was the first victim, followed by his wife, her sister, and lastly, the two boys. An initial inspection of the crime scene yielded no significant clues or leads. The absence of the lethal weapon, coupled with the fact that valuables and money were left untouched, indicated that the primary objective was the elimination of the Lin family, rather than robbery. Initially, multiple assailants were suspected, as it seemed unlikely that one person could single-handedly overpower so many. However, evidence suggested that the children were awake and had desperately tried to escape during the attack, as indicated by blood stains and splatters throughout the house. Interestingly, all adult victims, besides head injuries, also showed signs of strangulation, possibly to minimize resistance during the assault. Identical bloody shoe prints were found in each room with a unique tread pattern, but the shoe brand couldn't be identified, only its size. No foreign fingerprints were discovered, suggesting that the killer or killers wore gloves. At first, there were no leads or theories about the identity of the perpetrator, as family, friends, and neighbors unanimously stated that the Lin family had no known enemies. The motive for such a brutal massacre of 5 people remained unclear. The time of the attack was established to be between midnight and 3:00 a.m. on July 18th. The Days and her guardians, Brenda Lin, the eldest and now the sole survivor of the extensive Lin family, was on a school trip to New Caledonia at the time of the tragedy. She first learned of the horrific incident through social media and initially refused to believe that it involved her own family, hoping for some mistake. Her aunt, Kathy, soon called her, confirming the dreadful news through tearful sobs. Brenda was quickly flown back to Sydney, where Kathy and Robert, her new guardians, met her at the airport. Brenda moved in with them, as the Lin family home was sealed as a crime scene. The next day, a grief-stricken Brenda was brought to the police station for questioning. However, she could offer no new information, insisting that her family had no enemies or ill-wishers and had noticed nothing unusual before her trip. Following her family's death, Brenda became the heir to a substantial fortune, including property and the family business. However, being a minor and still in school, her legal guardians, Aunt Kathy and her husband Robert, were responsible for managing the estate. Brenda's grandparents also offered their support, but Kathy and Robert insisted on being her primary caretakers. Robert even threatened legal action if the elderly relatives sought custody, arguing they were too old to care for a teenager. Eventually, the matter was settled amicably, and Brenda remained with her aunt and uncle. The Lin shop and publishing business, which had been temporarily closed, soon reopened under the management of the deceased. As Brenda was yet to take over the business operations, Robert also began actively reviewing the family's bank accounts, savings, real estate, and other assets. Investigation and theories. Experts repeatedly scrutinized the crime scene, meticulously documenting every detail. Despite their efforts, no concrete leads emerged. They deduced that the killer likely acted alone and entered the house quietly, suggesting either an unlocked door or the perpetrator having a key. The killer wore size 9.5 shoes with a distinct ornate tread pattern. The lethal weapon, believed to be a hammer, was never found in or around the house. The killer's use of gloves meant no fingerprints were left behind, and no foreign DNA was found, only traces from the 5 victims. A peculiar and significant detail was that bloodstains were found on the doorknobs of each bedroom where the perpetrators occurred, indicating the killer's bloodied gloves touched them. However, there were no bloodstains on the doorknob of Brenda's room, suggesting the killer knew she was not there. As one of Australia's most high-profile cases, the tragic incident was widely covered in the media. With no substantial evidence or suspects, various improbable theories emerged. Rumors circulated about the Lin's alleged vast fortune leading to their demise. There were theories of a robbery gone wrong, and even involvement of local Chinese mafia clans. Such theories weren't entirely dismissed, given the area's history with a burglary gang. The Lin shop had been attacked months before the tragedy, and men had witnessed an armored car robbery a week before the fatal incidents. Although the criminals wore masks and men couldn't identify them, it was speculated he might have been eliminated as a potential witness. Months passed with the investigation at a standstill. None of the theories were substantiated, and no suspects emerged. The robbery theory was eventually ruled out as money and valuables were untouched, and the killer seemed to have a singular purpose: to eliminate the household members. Additionally, the power was cut off in the house on the night of the fatal incidents, indicating the killer knew where the electrical panel was. The assailants' familiarity with the house in total darkness suggested they had been there before and knew the layout, possibly even obtaining a key in advance, a crucial overlooked clue. While reviewing the perplexing case details for the 100th time, an investigator repeatedly listened to Kathy's emergency call, searching for any overlooked clue. Surprisingly, a significant hint was found in that recording. The recording captured Kathy's hysterical attempts to explain the situation, her words jumbled and interrupted by cries and sobs. At the end of the call, when the operator confirmed that emergency services were en route, Kathy unexpectedly mentioned her husband's name, adding something in Cantonese, addressing him directly. This detail piqued the investigators' interest, prompting them to translate her words. It turned out Kathy was pleading with her husband not to leave her alone in the house. This was significant because Robert had decided to fetch the Lin parents on his own, leaving Kathy at the grisly crime scene before the police arrived. Robert's behavior seemed highly suspicious. 5 people had just been brutally taken away in the house, and the killer could still have been hiding inside, making Kathy a potential target. Yet, Robert appeared calm and simply left, as if he knew nothing bad would happen to his wife. The main suspect and new evidence. After several unproductive months, the police finally identified a primary and sole suspect, Robert Z. It was discovered that he had a key to his brother-in-law's house, which men had given him just in case. Shortly before the tragedy, curiously, Robert never mentioned this during interrogations, and Kathy was unaware that her brother had given her husband a key. Brenda unknowingly revealed this crucial detail to the investigators. Further investigation revealed that Robert's claim of being a successful ent doctor was a facade. While he did possess a medical degree, he never held a stable job in the field. Rumors suggested he fled to Australia to avoid punishment for alleged bribery charges in China. In Australia, Robert failed to establish himself professionally, squandering the last of his savings on unsuccessful business ventures. After moving to North Epping, he became essentially idle, relying on his wife's income and occasional financial assistance from Kathy's relatives. Once the guardianship papers for Brenda were finalized, Robert acted as if he had inherited the Lin family's estate. His first move was to force Yun's parents out of the house that Min had bought for them, though it was legally under the deceased name. Men and Kathy's parents remained in the house bought for them. Considering these facts and circumstances, investigators theorized that Robert was driven by intense envy of his wife's more successful and wealthy relatives, harboring a long-standing plan to seize their property, money, and lucrative business. Despite living under the same roof as the perpetrator of the crime against her family, Brenda and Kathy weren't considered in immediate danger. Brenda was oblivious to the true nature of her cohabitant, while Kathy was needed by Robert to maintain control over the family's assets. However, the police couldn't arrest Robert yet due to a lack of concrete evidence against him. Interrogation, surveillance, and arrest. The investigation team obtained permission to install several hidden cameras in the Z household, hoping to gather the evidence needed to prove Robert's guilt. The breakthrough came sooner than expected. Starting with an unsuspecting revelation by Kathy during an interrogation, Kathy mentioned her husband's preference for a particular brand of shoes. A few years back, Robert had purchased 2 pairs of sneakers from a limited edition series that he particularly liked. He had worn out and discarded one pair, but the other was still carefully stored in its box at their home. Notably, Robert wore size 9.5 shoes, the same size as the killer's. The key evidence came when Robert was captured on one of the hidden cameras meticulously destroying the box of the aforementioned shoes. This footage led to a warrant to search the suspect's home, where a new pair of size 9.5 sneakers was found. The tread pattern on these shoes matched the prints found at the crime scene. Additionally, a small smeared trace resembling blood was discovered in his garage. Forensic analysis confirmed that it was indeed a blood stain containing the DNA of all 5 Lin family victims, literally linking it to the crime scene. This evidence led to Robert's arrest, finally providing the concrete proof the police needed to take action. Arrest, trial, and shocking revelations. In May 2011, 2 years after the tragic incidents, evidence led to Robert Z's arrest. He vehemently denied any involvement, claiming the blood found in his garage appeared after their return from the Lin house. He also dismissed the significance of the sneakers with matching tread patterns found in his possession, asserting they were brand new, and that he had immediately disposed of the old pair. While awaiting trial in prison for 3 years, Robert unknowingly shared cells with several informants. In one such conversation, he confessed to meticulously planning the crime and carefully covering his tracks. He mentioned buying the lethal weapon in a remote store without surveillance cameras and drugging his wife with sedatives and tea to prevent her from waking up and noticing his absence. He disposed of the hammer, sneakers, gloves, and clothing in a manner that ensured they would never be found. At the trial, Robert denied everything, and the only evidence against him were the statements from his cellmates and the previously mentioned indirect evidence. As a result, the jury couldn't reach a unanimous verdict, and Robert was released on bail. In December 2015, the trial resumed. In June 2016, with testimony from another informant who claimed Robert confessed to an obsession with Brenda since she was 13. This led to a re-examination of Brenda, who tearfully admitted that Robert had coerced her into a sexual relationship shortly after she started living with them. Fearing retaliation, she had remained silent about the abuse for years. With these revelations and considering other evidence, Robert Z was found guilty on all charges. He received 5 life sentences, 1 for each fatal crime, without the possibility of parole. All his subsequent appeals were rejected. Thank you for watching, guys. Subscribe to the channel and don't forget to click the bell not to miss new stories from around the world. See you soon, take care.